Hi, Les. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Why? Oh, I know.
Hey,
Hey everyone,
Hi.
just a little bit of time to log on before we get started.
are you in your kitchen, Onana? Is that what I'm seeing in the back of you?
No, it's my room. Sorry, this is where my office is. Just give folks a little bit more time to log on.
And Mahina, it's your background still looks like the Lodge at Four Seasons. I mean, it's just, nice, comfortable couch, and the spa is right outside, right?
Yeah, so we do need one more for quorum. I know Steph's not gonna make it today. Was Roy, Tessie, and Mike, were they on meetings earlier? Oh, there's Roy. Okay, great. Hey, Roy.
Roy, you get to buy
Hi.
drinks because you made quorum.
Okay. Does anybody know if Tessie and Mike are going to join?
Tessie responded that she was going to participate, but I haven't seen her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike was not on the.
I'll
was
call
not on
Mike.
the-
Okay. Thanks, Mary. We got Tessie. Hey, Tessie.
Mike had his knee replaced over the weekend. He's in Florida at Mayo Clinic.
Okay.
So he's at rehab right now. So he's prepared to join the meetings because he's going to be down there a couple months.
Okay.
But he's not meeting ready today.
That's no problem. Thanks for finding that out first.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. It is 1:04 p.m. on Tuesday, August 3rd. Thank you, everybody, for joining our Environmental Advisory Council meeting. We do have quorum, so I'll go ahead and introduce the members of the council, and then we'll have the members of the public go ahead and introduce themselves. My name is Onana Thone. I'm chair of the council. The other members that we have here today are Don Heger Nordblum, Ron Terry, Robin K, Maka'ala Ka'omoana, Mary Berger, Mahina Tudor, Roy Abe, and Tessie Kenneman. We also have Les Segundo from the Environmental Review Program and our Attorney General, Andrew Goff. So I noticed that we do have 3 members of the public. Mr. Scruton, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself first for the record.
Yes, hello, my name is Gordon Scruton. I am a member of the Environmental Committee for the General Contractors Association of Hawaii. And they've asked me to start attending meetings so we can get an idea of what the environmental council is up to and if I can bring any information to our environmental committee.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, Ms. Claudia Rohr, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And then, oh, you're on mute.
It might have my deceased husband's name on the iPad,
Oh,
but
no.
it's
Oh, go ahead.
me.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, we do have one more member of the public. Your Zoom name is D. Diaz. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the record, please.
Sure. Hi. First, I'm going to apologize. I don't have a camera on my laptop,
Problem.
but my name is Dominic Diaz. I'm with the Honolulu Board of Water Supply
Okay.
with our Long Range Planning Division.
All right, thank you for joining.
Mhm.
All right, folks, so we will go ahead and jump into our agenda. All right, we do not have meeting minutes, so we'll go ahead and skip on to that. Item number 3, I don't think we have Mary Alice with us today.
No, she's on vacation.
On vacation. Oh, okay, okay. All right, so no Office of Planning Director's report. All right, Ron, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you for the exemption committee update.
Okay, thank you, Onona. The exemptions committee met today at 11 o'clock, and we only had one item on our agenda, and that was the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. And we got a list that was revised to reflect some comments that I had made. Dominic is of course from the Board of Water Supply here today. He wasn't at our exemptions committee meeting. We had a number of questions during the meeting about the list, and unfortunately, we couldn't get those answered. So we decided to defer on that list until such time as we could speak further with the Board of Water Supply. So we won't be bringing an action item before the council today to release the list for public comment. But the questions were relatively minor. We do expect that we can get those answered. And then maybe at the next exemptions committee meeting, if it fits the Board of Water Supply's time, we could have them there and we could discuss it. Dominic, I guess I'm breaking news to you here, but I did want you to understand that. Do you have any questions for us or anything you want to say?
I don't. If there was a record of the questions, I'd be happy to prepare responses and partake in the next meeting. Or if you want me to just come be part of the next meeting and try and answer your questions on the spot there, whatever's, however we can best address any outstanding issues so that we can get the exemption list, continuing to move forward for adoption.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. We will later this week. I'll compile a list of the questions. There was only about 4, and they really kind of fall into 2 categories. So I'm sure that we can resolve them. So I'll email you that, and then hopefully, our next meeting will be September, what is it, 7th? Is that right?
Yes.
September 7th. Excuse me. And it'll probably be at noon again. So if you can put that on your calendar, that'd be great. But in the meantime, I'll mail you a list of the questions that I think you'll be easily able to answer them.
Sure.
Okay. So, but I do want to thank you very much for at least for coming to this meeting, and we'll be working on your list soon. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Appreciate it.
And for the rest of the council, we really didn't have any other business today. I'd be happy to take any questions. None? Okay. Well, now back to you.
All
Likewise,
right.
I'm sorry. If I likewise, are there any questions for the Board of Water? Or I do have another meeting coming up, and if I'm not needed, I'll jump off, and I will look forward to receiving the questions from Ron.
Yeah, sorry, Dominic. Yeah, definitely. Now this will be it for you
Okay,
guys. Thanks
great.
for attending.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you, Dominic. Yeah, no question from the council members. I don't know if there are any questions from the members of the public or testimony on that agenda item. Okay. All right, so then, thank you, Ron. I will go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. And actually what I'll propose to do, since we do have Claudia Rohr here, is to take item 6 out of order before we take item 5. So Claudia, if you we did receive your inquiries that you sent to us. I think it was actually a day after our last meeting. So this was the first meeting that we could take it up as a council. Did you want to provide? I'm sorry.
Sorry. I think you put on the agenda only 1 of 2 questions.
Okay.
But, I'm not sure. I'm trying to read the agenda.
Right. I think the second one we had received after our agenda had already gone out. So under chapter 92, we do have to post our agendas 6 days prior to the meeting. So we couldn't agendize your second question for this meeting. So the earliest that we could do the second one is for our August meeting. I mean, our September meeting, apologies. Yeah. So we do have just the first inquiry that you sent to us in June. So if you wanted to provide a little information on that, you have the opportunity to do so now. Anything in addition to what you put in your written inquiry?
Chapter 41 was abolished. I mean, was deleted. So I'm not sure. I'll have to look up my original email, but I think the first question that I had was the one about, I think you have it backwards, but you didn't agendize it. But hold on, HRS 41-15. I just tried to look it up. Hold on.
Okay, yeah, we had linked a copy of your email. I think it had 2 questions on it. So I'll just go ahead and read them quickly. And if you
read it for me, please.
Sure. Your questions were, does HRS 41-15 trump chapter 343 and HAR 11-200.1? And then you had 2 sub questions under that. The first was, is a property tax exemption a form of funding assistance flowing from the county? And the second is if a public charity / nonprofit corporation receives or will apply to receive a property tax exemption, does that qualify as a proposed use of county funds for their proposed program or project on that land that will require 1 or more discretionary agency approvals under the new rules? So
that
right.
was the one I thought you were agendizing. Is that the one we're talking about?
That was the inquiry that you sent to us on July 6th. It looks like while we were in our meeting. So this was the first meeting that we could address it.
Okay.
So just, at this point, if you have any additional information that you want to provide related to those questions, then you can do that now.
Okay. I would like your opinion, because I find that the county of Hawaii almost never requires environmental review. They always find a way around it. And it is personal to me. And it's a matter of, I would like to engage in a discussion with my next door neighbors who happen to be a nonprofit. And I'm trying to find a format to go into discussion with them, which an EA would do. So that's the background. But I think it would help, because I, over the years, believe that the county has made wrong decisions about environmental review, and they've never gotten any training from you folks I think it would be helpful to have you actually review this question and put it in writing so that I can bring it to their attention that I asked. That way, without having to go to court, they could talk to you. They could seek a little education. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you for that information. You know, council members, at this point, do you have any questions for Ms. Rohr? Okay. You know, so what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna make a motion to go into executive session on this issue. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you. I think Maka got it first. Okay.
That's fine.
All right, so all of those in favor of moving to executive session? Okay. Do we have anybody opposed? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Chair,
Yes,
can you explain the reason we're going to executive session?
sure, right. You know, this is,
Record.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ron. You know, the reason I'm moving to go into executive session is that, you know, Ms. Roy, you're presenting some legal questions to us, right? And they may also be procedural in nature that we need to consult with our Attorney General on. So we want to go ahead and consult on, you know, the council's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities related to the questions that you posed to us today.
Will
Thank
you have a public discussion after your executive session?
Yes, we'll come back. So what we'll do right now is we're going to do essentially a breakout room for our executive session. And then, so you folks can hang out here in this room, and then we will come back into our open session.
But you will be discussing it in public after you come back?
Yes, we'll discuss how we will proceed in public once we come back. That's correct.
Okay, because even a discussion of it would be helpful to me.
Sure, I can't say that yet. We need to go into executive session to determine whether or not we can substantively discuss the questions, but we're gonna go ahead and consult with our counsel first.
Okay,
Okay, so yeah, if everybody can, you know, members of the public, please hang out here. I can't tell you how long we'll be, but once we are done in executive session, we will return to this meeting room. So Les, if you can start moving the members of the council and Andrew into a breakout room, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Claudia?
Yes.
Yeah,
Hi.
I am in Maui. Just curious, what is the issue that they're looking at in executive session?
Hi. Oh, okay. two. One, I put down the wrong law. It's Hawaii Revised Statute, Section 46-15. It says that they can, hold on, I just sent the law to them. Hold on. I was just reading yours. It's funny. Hold on.
Are you with the city and county?
No, I'm a person. I just have a lawsuit against Honua, a power plant that's going in.
Okay.
Anyway, I've been saying for 11 years that they needed to do environmental review. Okay, so the law says, I can email this to you if you want to give me
No,
your.
I was just curious. I came in late,
It
so I didn't.
said- I became aware of it because I started participating in the legislative process. It 46-15, experimental and demonstration housing projects. A, the mayor of each county, after holding a public hearing on the matter and receiving the approval of the respective council, shall be empowered to designate areas of land for experimental and demonstration housing projects, the purpose of which are to research and develop ideas that would reduce the cost of housing in the state. Except as herein provided, the experimental and demonstration housing projects shall be exempt from all statutes, ordinances, charter provisions, and rules or regulations of any government agency or public utility relating to planning, zoning, construction standards. Hold on, it's moving around. For subdivisions, development and improvement of land, and the construction and sale of homes thereon, provided that the experimental and demonstration housing project shall not affect the safety standards or tariffs by the public utility. Anyway, does it say there that you're the mayor?
What?
I'm
No.
sorry.
No,
You're
I'm,
the mayor?
I'm a resident. I'm a resident on Maui, bringing an issue up before the Environmental Council.
Okay, so your name is Dick.
Mayor,
What?
M-A-Y, not a mayor is M-A-Y-O-R.
Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't think you were the mayor of county.
No.
Maui. Anyway,
Okay, we're back in session. They're back in session.
okay. I discovered it was 46-15, HRS 46.
Okay, let's let the council go. Let's.
Thanks for your patience, folks. We're just waiting for everybody to come back in from the breakout room.
So that was a typo using my finger on my iPhone. I meant to write HRS 46-15.
Okay.
The question about does it trump chapter 343 and HAR 11-200.1.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll make a note of that. Hey, Les, I think we're missing Tessie. Did we lose her?
What's that?
Oh, no,
Could you
sorry.
speak up? I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
No problem. I was speaking to our staff. Les, is Tessie still on or what? No, Les, you're on mute. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, there she is. Okay, thanks, folks. Thanks for your patience. Okay, we're back from executive session. It's 1:49 p.m. Ms. Roy just went on the record to say that the statute that she cited in her email to us was 41-15, but it should have been 46-15. So just for everybody's benefit. All right, so thank you again for your folks' patience. At this time, I want to open it up to the council members. Ms. Roy, you presented us with a very interesting question. And we did have some discussion on that. So if any council members wanted to comment on that, you're welcome to do so now. No? Okay. Well,
If the discussion wasn't really something that needed to be done in the executive session, I would ask that the council members repeat their comments.
sure. Okay, well,
For benefit.
right. I'll go ahead and get started because, on my side, I just had some questions on what the proper procedure would be. The council typically doesn't take, these kind of email comments. And so what we do have is, a process for declaratory petitions. And so, and typically those are for very specific questions and not questions that are kind of really broad in nature. You posed us some good questions, but they were very broad. So, that's a little bit of my concern on, what the correct procedure is moving forward from here.
May I respond? I sent the questions in because I called several times and left messages for a specialist to call me back. And apparently since COVID, there is nobody answering anybody's calls. So I wrote the question and just kept sending it in until somebody wrote back and said that they would bring it up in August. So that's how this happened. I'm perfectly capable of writing asking for a declaratory ruling. And you would want the specific property, etc.
I think that would be helpful for us in terms of providing a response. The reason being, we have gotten declaratory petitions previously that are, kind of hypotheticals, and it's very difficult for us to answer a hypothetical. A lot of questions really turn on a fact-by-fact determination. So at least for me, I think that would be helpful. I would ask, the other council members to chime in on any discussion they want to add to this. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, this is Ron Terry. I agree with you. Hypothetical is a hard case to answer. We need to understand exactly what you're challenging. You bring up a couple things. You bring up use of funds. You bring up an individual applicant's action who isn't really an applicant because they haven't applied for an EIS. And if it could be more specific, perhaps we could entertain as a declaratory ruling, and we could see whether we could answer it or not. I hesitate to promise you that we could provide a definitive answer, though. That's one thing I do want to say. It is a very interesting question.
Yeah, I know it's difficult, especially after the super ferry, I don't know. You can get dragged in, I guess, but that wouldn't be my intention. I guess I would bring up this. I think I've written it several times, but I'm not getting anywhere. Hawaii County has no training from you folks, and they're not going to ask for it. I think the response of Scott or somebody was that you can't force them. But I'm thinking that you could offer training to each of the islands. And there's probably a lot of planning folks who would attend if it was offered. And it wouldn't single out a single county if you offered training. And at this point, the environment is now so fragile that we just don't know if tomorrow suddenly the oceans are going to rise. And we just don't really know about this heating up of the earth and what's going on. So it would be helpful if there were more participants in the environmental review process so we can ask our questions. So it's a dialogue. It's informative, but the bottom line is if you win the lawsuit, all those entitlements that they got without environmental review are void. So it's actually the last word. Like in the Huhonua case, it's in front of the PUC. And if they don't get their power purchase agreement, that would appear to make it dead. But if they revive again, it comes down to these permits that they've gotten to date have never had environmental review, despite the fact that they're doing injection wells and all sorts of stuff. But that's a different case, but that's my lawsuit. And I did drag in the EU folks or the count. I don't know how I did it. I did it as the agency because I thought there was a question of which agency between DOH, DLNR, and the county would be the agency to require environmental review and to process it. So I brought you into that, although now you're no longer part of DOH, but still, my relationship to your agency has always been one of education. And I've always called to try to get educated so I'm not taking a misstep. And I don't want to fight with my next door neighbors. I want to have a conversation, but because of their cultural orientation, they want to say, it's none of your business. We're Kanaka. We can do whatever we want. But in reality, there is a nonprofit that's doing the doing. And they're trying to do something that's not permitted in this zoning and not even permitted with a use permit, but I want to support them.
Claudia, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to kind of get back to the question that you asked specifically, because like we said, it is very interesting here. And it seems to have two aspects to it. And I wanted to get some clarification from you on it about what you're thinking. One is that, is the property tax exemption a form of funding? In other words, is the county engaging in a funding activity when it gives a property tax exemption? That's sort of like one of the questions there. And the other question seems to be more an applicant, where you're talking about if it's a project that has a discretionary approval, well, that's an applicant action. You seem to be asking two things. Is there a program? Is there a government program that requires compliance with Chapter 343? And is an applicant doing something with government assistance? There's two aspects there. Now, I just want to, are you suggesting that the use of property tax exemptions for various purposes, say somebody's over 65, they get a property tax exemption. Is that a use of government money? Is that a program that requires an EIS or an EA? Should the County of Hawaii conduct an EIS for its program of providing tax exemptions for people over 65? Is that
the tax exemption is not the program. The program is the folks have a program for the property as their mission statement in their nonprofit. It's their mission statement. And they say that they want to, it has to do with aquaculture and traditional Hawaiian fish ponds. And I have a fish pond that combines with their fish pond at high tide. So I have an interest in what they're doing, and I'm also concerned about certain issues. One of my fish died one day after they did some spraying, so I want to ask questions. Now, what they're trying to do isn't exactly, it's very, it doesn't fit the Euclidean zoning that we have, but it fits it fits a cultural agenda that's protected under the Constitution. And I don't particularly have a problem with them pursuing what they are good at, which is combining the science with the traditional fish pond management. I'm very interested in it. I want to support them, but I want to be able to ask questions without threatening them.
But of course, you brought up the property tax exemption, and that's a question that you wanted us to consider, whether that was a form of assistance, which would be a program from the government.
Of course, they're going to apply. They just bought the property, but of course they're going to apply. My argument with the tax department is unless they get their zoning issues like a use permit or zoning variance or some kind of, revocable permit to use, whatever the vehicle is, that will allow the county to regulate on some level what they're doing, so that it's not, it doesn't get to the point where they're harvesting thousands of fish and gutting them on site in a residential neighborhood. And then there's just issues with traffic. They keep backing out onto the roadways and almost running me over. They have a lot of people, because it's a nonprofit with only 5 directors and no members. All the people who come on site, which they claim they service like 300 people last year, I think, or the year before, they service a lot of people.
Can I break in here for a second? I'm sorry, Claudia, I don't mean to Andrew from the Attorney General's. I just say we're getting a little far off the agenda item, which is the specific inquiry.
Well, basically, I think the question is very basic. If a nonprofit is using the money for their program and they're getting a $9,000 tax break because they are a nonprofit, and they have to prove that they're operating their program on the property to get that exemption, that is the process. They come out and look at them and say, oh yes, you're holding an educational program for school children.
Yeah,
And
Claudia, again, just, and I don't mean to cut you off here, but the agenda item on the specific
That
inquiry.
question should be able to answer. That's pretty clear.
I think you had a lot of aspects to the issue that you brought up. There are maybe some that the council could address, but we don't have enough facts. I'm still of the opinion that, if you can go ahead and do a formal petition, our rules are Hawaii Administrative Rules, Title 11, Chapter 201, and we do have a section on the proper process for a declaratory petition. If you seeing the details written out and specifically the questions that would apply to our rules, because, we really deal only with the Chapter 343 rules. I think a lot of the issues that you brought up might have other application elsewhere where we may not be able to provide an opinion on because we don't have jurisdiction on that. But having a written petition with, detailed questions may be helpful to us if you're inclined. based on, the email that you provided to us today, I don't think we have the information that we could provide you with an answer to what you're looking for, unfortunately. Yeah.
It's a very complex case, and
Right.
I worry about them because they may not be sophisticated enough to get through the local government regulations, and I
Okay.
worry about that. So I have them. I'm trying to maintain a relationship with them, but at the same time reserve my right to ask questions. I don't know if I'll do the declaratory ruling idea because I'm balancing being a good neighbor
Mhm.
with, I'm trying not to be the policeman. I
Sure.
want the county to be the policeman, the police doing the policing. I want to be the good neighbor. So I may or may not do anything further. But thank you.
Yeah,
But
and
I
again,
was shocked about 46-15 exempting housing projects from environmental review, or that's what it appears to read. It can legislation actually say that they're exempt from all statutes, including environmental review? It seems strange. I mean, that's like the super fairy thinking. Was that real, that they could legislate that they didn't need to do environmental review?
again, we haven't looked at that statute. It's, wasn't before us for this agenda item, so we can't provide you with an opinion on that. But again, we're willing to review a petition if you want to go ahead and file one. As Ron said, we can't promise that we'll be able to answer all of the questions that you have. Again, we'll have to analyze whether or not we have jurisdiction over that and whether or not we have the information to go ahead and do it. So, but we do thank you for your inquiry. Again, it's interesting and it raises interesting questions. We just can't answer it at this time.
Don't you have a specialist anymore? Is there
You know,
no one working?
Well, we are a volunteer council, so we don't have a specialist on the. I'm not sure what you mean by a specialist for the council.
Okay, you used
Right.
to be able to call OEQC and someone would answer the phone.
Mhm.
That's not true anymore. I heard that your funding was cut off.
Yeah, OEQC is now the Environmental Review Program, and they're administratively housed under the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So
And
yeah, you're moved over this legislative session. Mhm.
so do I need to call a different number if I want to talk to a person?
It should be the same number. I'm just, I'm not sure that OEQC can provide an answer on this either. But I believe it's the same number.
Madam Chair, in
Oh, yeah.
spirit, in the spirit of discussion that was had in the executive session that should also be had in this setting, my name is Mary Berger, and I have known Claudia Rohr for over 20 years. We worked together at the same real estate firm in the 1990s. I don't believe I need to recuse myself in this situation. I believe I'm capable of making an independent decision with no bias. So that's what I said in the other meeting. So
Could you say that once again for my hearing disability issues?
I'm disclosing the
Slower,
fact.
slower.
My name is Mary Berger. I'm disclosing the
Mary.
fact that Claudia and I worked together at the same real estate firm in the 1990s. I don't believe I have a conflict of interest. I am capable of making an independent and unbiased decision. Claudia, that's the disclosure I made in the executive session. And so in fairness to you, I wanted to make it again in this session.
So I should call you? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that I know that I'm disclosing the fact that we have a prior relationship.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mary. All right, and so Claudia, I think you know,
I'm
at this time,
just very confused about what's happened to the OEQC and where I discover all the details of what's happened. It seems like the office has changed or moved. No one's answering the phone. You
Sure.
can leave messages, but you don't get any phone call back. I'm just confused.
so I'll answer that quickly, and then we do have to move on to our next agenda item, unfortunately. But you know, this past legislative session, House Bill 1318 was passed. So the responsibilities, duties, obligations of OEQC were transferred from the Department of Health to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So OEQC was formerly, you know, they're now called the Environmental Review Program, same staff, but now they're under the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So,
I'm gonna have to ask for your minutes because I'm hard of hearing. And are you saying Act 31A?
oh, House Bill 1318, I believe it was Act, is it 152? Does anybody remember? Act 152.
Okay, Act 152.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that explains what happened this last legislative session with the administrative move. So, okay, you know, at this point, what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to make a motion to decline to respond to the email inquiry from Ms. Rohr. You know, for the reasons that we stated today, it's a hypothetical. It's too speculative for us to respond to at this time. And that would be it. Do I have a second? Okay, I think I saw Robin first. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Okay, do we have any opposed? Okay, any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes. So Ms. Rohr, as we said, you know, apologies that we can't respond to your inquiry now, but if you would like to submit a declaratory petition with, you know, details, we'd be happy to take a look at it at that time. So thank you. Okay, thanks everybody. You know, moving on to the next agenda item, we took it out of order and I see Mr. Mayor that you have joined us. So thank you again for joining us. Did you have anything that you wanted to add, you know, to your written inquiry to us? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I apologize. Yes, I want to add some. I found out after your last meeting, I called the planning director here in Maui to find out why that project was changed from being reviewed by the Maui County and now is being reviewed by the LUC. And I found out there were some technical reasons that were given that said that the LUC should review it first and then the county review it. So in that respect, I was wrong to say they were shopping around, although they may have been the ones who initiated that. I don't know. But in any case, it is probably correct that the LUC should review this thing first for the county. The second thing I'm concerned about, though, and I put that in my letter to you in the paragraph where I say that the community here did a thorough review of that, and all the information that was gathered and the letters written by the public were sent to the applicant for this hotel in Maui. And they say that they will print those letters that were sent in. But what I'm asking is that they actually respond to those letters. And I would ask that the Environmental Council contact the developer, Olson Company, and tell them that not only should they reprint the letters, but they should include that in the new and final and new draft environmental impact statement that they're drawing up. That's my main concern. I raised also at the last meeting another issue. Let's just take this one first.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear. You're asking that they print the comment letter submitted on the draft EIS that they withdrew and include it in the new EIS.
I think he was asking that they respond to those previous letters. That They said they're going to print them. And Chair, can I ask a question here at this
Yes.
point?
Go ahead.
Dick, I wanted to know if the project that you're talking about has substantively changed since it's gone to different agencies. You know, is it different land? Is it different number of units? Is it different concept? Or is it basically the same project?
Very much basically the same project. The only change that we can detect is they changed the name from Windward Hotel to Kanaha Hotel. There's no indication, same number of rooms, same location, same property. There may be other legal issues involved that I'm unaware of, but basically it's the same project to build a hotel.
Yeah, I see your concern. I wonder if it would be possible to actually take the questions that were in the original applicant, you know, from all the different folks that were in there, and compile them into one set of questions that could be submitted by, say, perhaps you. I know you're good at it. And
yeah, I mean, I could do that. I think that putting a third person like myself into the mix would not be I don't have any legal status to do this. I think just a letter from the council saying, we expect you now, since you've got the same project, different name, different agencies are reviewing it, that all the information you received up till now be responded to. And if there are impacts that are listed in those letters, that you indicate how you mitigate them. Because some people in the public may not understand this is the same project, may not respond this time. You know, that depends on the publicity that goes out on it.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. Did they issue a new draft EIS? Sorry.
Excuse me, I'm just getting over pneumonia. Okay, excuse me. Say that again, please.
My question was, did the project, because my understanding of what you sent us, there was a withdrawal letter. They withdrew the draft EIS that you're talking about that the comments were on. Have they issued a new EIS yet?
No, but they have been going all over the community. I've got numerous people in the community saying they contacted me, they're lobbying to try to get supporters who will support their project. And I'm surprised some of the people they've gotten are really on the periphery, and others are people they should be gotten to. But I've had, I think, 4 or 5 people at least calling me and saying, you know, what are they doing and why are they contacting me?
Thank you.
Let me, yeah, I just think the 2 things. One is that they do respond, and they also list the mitigation to the various comments that were given, the impacts that were presented to them the first time. That should be part of their impact of their final EIS eventually anyways.
Does anybody else have any other council members have questions? No, okay. Any members of the public have questions on this? Okay. So, you know, I want to make a motion to go into executive session on this issue as well. Again, executive session would be to discuss the council's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities related to the inquiry from Mr. Mayor. Do I have a second? Makaala, thank you. All right, and all those in favor of going into executive session, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, do we have any opposed or any abstentions? Okay, so the motion carries. Les, if you can go ahead and move us over. Members of the public, apologies again. We'll be gone for a little bit in executive session, and then we will return to open session. Thanks for your
Mahalo.
patience.
Mahalo.
Thank you, Dick.
Claudia? Claudia? Can you hear me? You're muted. You're muted.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Hi,
okay.
let me move. I have to plug in here.
Okay,
I use my iPad.
okay.
Let's see. Oh, okay.
Let
It might go. It might go dead.
let me try to briefly explain what I think they were trying to tell you. That beginning July 1st, last month, the whole OEQC moved from the Department of Health to the Office of Planning. And they're now part of that branch. They're also way understaffed. They only have 2 people in the office working, and probably both of them are working at home. So when you call, obviously you're not going to get any answer on the phone. You leave a message. And ideally, they should call back and respond to you. And I'm not sure why they didn't, but they're really understaffed. They're trying to put out the environmental notices and all the other stuff. And that's, I think, what they were trying to say when they talked about the move over to the other, and the bill they gave you and that act they gave you, the bills in the act that moved them from Department of Health over to Office of Planning.
Well, it's funny because they're the ones who suggested it be brought in front of the council. I didn't. I did say, could someone answer my question or the environmental council? Because I wasn't getting any response to my inquiries.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember now. I think it was just some kind of news article about, our mayor is very pro, he calls it being, trying to build the economy or something. He's pro-development. And there was an announcement about a housing project. And when I looked up the law, I always look up the law. Yeah, I always do. And read what the law says. And I'll probably read Act 151, something. See, it's hard for me to remember. I'm hard of hearing, so I have to concentrate so hard, but it's hard for me to remember. But I'll probably look up that too. But I think they're the ones who suggested that it be brought up in front of the council. And then I'm basically here to say, what happened to OEQC? Why is no one answering the phone or answering emails anymore?
There is no OEQC anymore.
Right. But
There is
but my question started in June.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't aware of that legislation. I was involved with other legislation. And I get really frustrated over legislation because there is no, you don't know what their recommendations are going to be in time to testify to it.
Yeah.
So it's very frustrating to deal with the legislature.
Yeah, you mentioned the super ferry a couple of times. Just as a footnote, this is the first time I've spoken to the environmental council since the super ferry. I was the one who initiated the actions by the environmental council in 2007 regarding the super ferry.
Right.
That was the last time I met with the environmental council, and we got excellent support from the environmental council that eventually turned out to be the basis for the Supreme Court decision against the super ferry.
Well, there's only X number of cases, and I read them over and over and over, and I don't just read the Supreme Court ruling. I go back and read the intermediate court ruling and the dissents, all that. I go back to see what they were vacating. Sometimes I go back to the circuit court and buy documents so I can read them. Anyway, it's the worst law in terms of the public and even county officials understanding, what the law says. It's not easy to understand. And it's funny, I had Charles Flaherty telling me, oh, you can't do anything anymore now that they passed 11-200.1, HAR, 11-200.1. And I thought, really? I thought it'd be easier now that they're talking about the flow of funding. To me, it was going to be easier, but he's of the opinion that you can't hope to get environmental review anymore because of the new rules. I never saw it that way, but I'm always studying, I'm always
Well,
reading.
that's why eventually you have to go to court if you want to get what you want.
I am in court. I have two different lawsuits, one at circuit court, one at the ICA. Huhonua Bioenergy. Have you been hearing about their power plant in Pepacao?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
I don't know the details, but I know about it.
Well, I was an undercover informant to the EPA in 2000. And I informed them of the conditions at the plant and what I had discovered in the state of Hawaii Clean Water Department records and in the solid waste records. And they sent a criminal investigator to my house wearing a gun, no less. And she told me, you're either part of the cover up or you're going to tell me what you know. And she confiscated my photographs, including the negatives. And I had laid out all my 5 feet of files to show her how they were getting away with they had violated the Clean Water Act for 10 years with discharging their thermal waste more than 2 degrees above ambient 1 mile offshore. They would take a temperature reading 2 miles offshore, 1 mile offshore, and it would be more than 2 degrees different than ambient. I mean, they were heating up a large area of the ocean, and the state had never done an enforcement action. So the EPA came in 2001, and I learned from them how they do it and why. They said for some reason the state won't do it, so we're going to come in and do it. And they were in the middle of getting a new NPDES permit approved. And they found me because I was the only person who commented on that permit. I asked them to send the documents to the Hilo DOH office so I could make comments. And my comments were, this document that I'm commenting on is misleading. It's only saying what their average high temperature is, when in reality, for the last 10 years, they've violated the upper limit of their permit several times, and in temperature and in volume. They were adding fresh water to try to bring the temperature down. And I uncovered all these water agreements. It was because I was doing real estate. But anyway,
Are you familiar? Do you know Henry Curtis?
Huh?
Do you know Henry Curtis?
Yeah, Henry and I are very close.
Okay.
I'm helping him with his informational requests at the PUC. He's the only one who's made them. So basically, Henry and I are working off each other along with other people. Henry gets his best ideas from the comments that we all make at the PUC.
Right.
And then he got involved with the DOH permits for Huhonua because I kept writing that the rate does make a difference, because Huhonua is claiming they're producing 30 megawatts. They're actually and that the rate is that they're claiming that they should get a certain rate based on everything over 21 megawatts doesn't have a facilities charge or something weird. Anyway, it turned out rate was going to kill the coral. It came down to that because the rate had a certain weird formula. It's different than before. It's it costs less the more Helco uses, and it costs more the less they use. So they're trying to get a permit for their injection wells based on 21 megawatts. And other than that, they would be killing the coral when the hot water comes through the seabed. But at the PUC, they're saying they want this power purchase agreement because of the sliding rate that it's cheaper the more they use, and it's more expensive the less they use. Anyway, the whole thing came down to there was a relationship, and Henry and I have been debating whether the environmental review applies to the PUC, and they just came out and demanded that Puna Geothermal do a EA or EIS. The PUC just did that. So now Puna Geothermal has to do an EIS before they can proceed in front of the PUC. And my lawsuit, basically I have two for a certain reason. The judge wouldn't let me amend my first one. He said you could file another action. So I did. So I have two. But mine basically is saying my action is based off the PUC's approval of a project that had transformed from what had been reviewed by Hawaii County on their SMA permit. It had changed, and that they were proposing to increase the amount of electricity produced. They were suddenly going to use injection wells. They were doing X and X and X, and it was substantially a different project than it was before. And I used the timing of the PUC's approval of their power purchase agreement as the timing for my lawsuit. But I didn't name the PUC on purpose because I said Hawaii County was the agency that was responsible for requiring the environmental review because they were the first agency to give an approval to Huhonua. But Hawaii County will not update that SMA. And of course, every time you get a new mayor and a new planning director, things change. And we have a planning director that nobody agreed qualified. He doesn't have a college education. His claim to fame is that he served on the planning commission. And a bunch of us didn't believe that he could even serve as planning director.
Okay, that's enough. I don't need to know all this stuff on that. You give me a lot more information than I wanted. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you're just going on and things about it.
No, anyway, I'm glad it sounds like they might help you here.
Hopefully. Well, we'll see. Let's see what they do.
I'm just waiting to hear what they say. It's always dangerous for them to help people because they can get dragged in, right?
All right, thanks everybody for your patience while we went into executive session on this agenda item. I'm gonna, go ahead and open it up to the council members to, provide any opinions or discussion that you want to go ahead and say in open session. Do we have any takers?
One of the parts of our discussion was whether or not we have the authority to do what you've asked. There's some other pieces that Onana and others can speak to, but I don't think we have the authority to do that specific question you're asking us to do. It might be a different story if the legislature gave us staff or budget, or we had a specific authority to be an enforcer, but I don't think we do.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not asking for enforcement, but just merely a letter to them, alerting them, because this is very unique. It hardly ever happens that an entity goes from one approving agency to another. And because they did that, I would think you would have it within your overall domain of trying to make sure that the environmental laws are followed. So saying, we expect you to include all the information you've already gotten, respond to it, include it in your new version.
Well, I think we have the authority to interpret our own rules. And, if the right person asked and the right person got the letter, they could see what we intended there. But at this point, we don't have, the facts are not all before us yet. I certainly understand your concern. But we have not seen what's happening with the EIS yet. We don't know what it looks like, what it's going to look like. And we also have not let the Land Use Commission use their procedures. They're the ones in charge of ensuring that the environmental impact statement meets all the rules. And I think we need to let that process unfold. We need to let the applicant write the EIS, and we need to let the Land Use Commission review what the applicant has written and modify it as necessary, approve it, give their opinion about it. I would advise you to share this strongly with the Land Use Commission and see where they land after this happens. If in the end you are unhappy and you feel that the law has been violated, that the rules are not being followed, we will have a fact pattern. We'll have a whole bunch of things in front of us that we could entertain, perhaps as an invitation for a declaratory ruling, but it's not ripe yet. There's just a number of things that still need to unfold. That's my thinking.
Who's speaking? I don't know who's speaking right now.
So I'm very sorry, Dick. Ron Terry, my camera malfunctioned.
Okay.
I'm a council member. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you, Ron, for that. I mean, Mr. Mayor, I kind of share the same concerns that Ron mentioned and also that Robin mentioned. At this point, like you told us earlier, the new draft EIS hasn't come out. We don't know for a fact, that the project hasn't changed. And so there are still some things we need to know, and we don't know ultimately what the new draft EIS would look like, if they will include the other comments and whatnot. So it is, premature for us to go ahead and, make any kind of decision on that at this time.
Let me ask, I understand what you're all saying in terms of the time frame on this. Let's say they issue the EIS, and let's say they did not do the things I'm asking them to have done. The general public has then, 30 to 45 days or whatever it is to comment on the draft. They will then go ahead and prepare their final. At what stage does anybody enforce them to do the things I'm asking, namely responding to those earlier comments? Let's say they didn't do it. Do you folks seem reluctant to want to take action? So I'm just wondering, would you be empowered to take action, say you didn't do it at this stage?
Yeah, see, the council, we don't review specific EAs and EISs, so we don't have enforcement authority, I think is what you're looking for. So our understanding based on the materials that you provided to us is that the Land Use Commission is the accepting authority. So these are issues, as Ron's suggestion, that should certainly be raised to them, because the LUC is going to look at their document to determine whether or not it meets the required criteria, right? So they would be the entity that would do that.
Right, but let me just, as a final thing, the big question is, wouldn't it be proper for you, maybe you don't have the power right now, to seek power from the state ledge that would allow you to review processes? Right now, you don't seem at very, you say, no, it's up to the LUC. Well, too often the LUC has not done its job. Who enforces them to do their job? There should be somebody who makes sure that the whole environmental process is done correctly. And I would hope that you would gain authority at some point to be the reviewers of those types of things without the public having to go to court every time.
This is Robin Kay, and I was just speak for myself here. I think it would be, remember, we're all volunteer. This is an all volunteer group. And I think having the authority would also require having the resources to do what you're requesting. A lot of people feel the same way that you do. Some of us feel that way, but we don't have the capacity to do that. So I think, in my view, it would be something to go and work with the legislature in the future about, how do these things get enforced? Is it the EAC? Is it some other body that's, we're not aware of right now? But we don't have the resources to do what you're asking, or I don't think the authority yet.
I appreciate it. I thank you for all your volunteer time. As some of you may know me, I've volunteered on many things, been chaired of many committees, and I appreciate the effort the volunteers put in. And I would hope that we can resolve this at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you for sharing, the inquiry with us, and just so we can close out the procedure on this, I will make a motion to decline to respond to Mr. Mayor's inquiry at this time for the reasons that we stated on the record. We don't have enough information right now, and based on the information that we do have, it's a little too premature for us to go ahead and provide any opinion on the matters within the inquiry. Okay, Robin, go ahead and second it. Thank you. All right, any further discussion on that motion? No. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mahina, we got you there? All right, thank you. Are there any opposed? All right, and any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, folks. The motion carries. And again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your inquiry and spending your time with us today.
Thank you.
All right, so we will go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. I'll hand it over to Mahina for the Rules Committee update.
Okay, great. Thanks, Winona. So the Rules Committee met this morning. We decided that where we're at with the revision of our procedural rules is that we have kind of several outstanding questions for our AG as we transition to the Office of Planning, which will kind of determine how we continue revising the rules. So the plan is that we're going to clean up the rules as we've discussed them so far, posing questions to our AG, and then kind of go from there. And this will be done soon before our next meeting. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, unless any members of the committee have anything to add. Are there any questions?
No, just to give folks, I guess, a flavor of what some of our questions were. They really do have to do with, again, what's the role of the council going forward? In particular, do we keep procedures for declaratory actions and that nature? So Andrew, just as a heads up, those are the type of questions that are coming your way. And I think once you give us some advice on that, we can probably clean up the draft and maybe put a draft before the council for review. And then Andrew, I guess, what would the next procedure be in that case? Because we, especially with, rulemaking and that type of thing, we'll have questions for you specifically, but we do want to make sure that no provisions in our rules conflict with anything with OP, right? So Mahina, did I miss anything? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys haven't given me the questions yet, right?
No, not yet, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I thought I
just
missed
heads up, that's the type of stuff that's coming your way in terms of, what we're going to be looking at and how do we proceed with finalizing the draft.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. Well, that's it for me.
Okay. Does anybody? Oh, sorry. Thanks, Mahina. I was going to ask if anybody else had any questions for Mahina on that update. And members of the public are welcome to ask questions at any time as well. Okay, thanks. Okay, so then I will go ahead and hand it over to Mary for the INO update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, your INO committee has been busy becoming forum producers. And thank you all for your attendance and participation in our most recent forum on watershed issues. We had well over 100 people attend or register, and we had close to 100 actually attend. We, at our meeting today, we decided that we wanted to regroup a little bit in how we organize and prepare for the forums. Now that we're part of the Office of Planning, it's added a layer of approvals or questions about approvals. And so we'd like to take this the agenda item as an opportunity to discuss what our process should be in having our flyers approved or generated. Does the Office of Planning have a template that they would prefer we use, or should we continue to do creative things on our own? If we do something creative on our own, in the past, we had it approved by Chair Onana because Keith was the acting director of OEQC. He gave that blessing to Chair Onana, but we now have a new, we're a slightly different entity. And so do these things need to be approved by the director of the Department of Planning, or is there someone that they've delegated authority to, et cetera, et cetera? Those are all outstanding concerns of ours.
Yeah, Andrew, maybe you can respond to that one in particular. So for marketing materials, essentially, that the council is using for these forums, do we run that by Mary Alice? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, I don't really know, but I can track that down.
Okay, yeah, and then Mary, maybe if you can send the last two flyers to Andrew, just so he has an idea of, you know,
Okay.
what we're looking at.
All
These are basically just the flyers with the profiles of the speakers, the registration Zoom link, and yeah, just, you know, information on when the forum's going to be. And I think we previously used OEQC's logo. You know, so just let us know. Obviously, that'll all need to be updated with the changeover to OP.
Yes, thank you. I will do that. That's kind of we probably all need to know what we call ourselves, what logo we use, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much, Andrew. The next item is that we would like to present to the council, and if there's any discussion to be had on the amendments we made to the procedures and checklists for forums. A couple years ago, we created a checklist for forums when we were doing them in person. And since now we're doing them electronically, we felt there were a few things that needed to be tweaked. And so that was agendized and presented to all of you with our agenda. And we would ask now, is there any discussion?
I have just a couple of points. If you go and look at, and first of all, thank you for doing this. This is great. It was really very helpful and well thought out. Nice work. If you look at page 1B, initial planning 47, I didn't know that the EC or the EAC had a budget. So much as I wish we did, I remember Scott saying maybe Onana's found some hidden budget money for us, but I don't remember us having a budget. So
yeah, I think our budget has really been generous benefactors, i.e. other council members.
right, we've done it with donations and I don't know whether we have the authority to do any kind of fundraising as an agency within another agency, but I just was hesitant to put that budget word in there. And then the only other thing I had was at page 3, your wonderful list of thank yous. I didn't see speakers being thanked in there.
Oh, believe me, the speakers got thanked.
Okay, I'm sure they did, knowing you, Mary, but you listed everybody else and I didn't see.
Yep, good idea. Yep.
Send out thank yous.
Right, to event sponsors, key assist. So it should be, speakers should be in there. I'm going to add speakers actually first.
Yeah, I knew you did, but it just as a editor being
I'll
anal.
put that in there. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, you know where it is? It's in the one immediately above that. But yeah, I guess I think
Yes,
the
have it
verbal
signed.
there, and then you're saying after as well, right? Okay.
That's actually thanking them when they're at the function. Oh, no, no.
Okay.
Robin's very correct. For the record, they all received a gift. All of our panel participants received a gift from all of you. I signed the card for all of us. So.
Thanks, Mary.
And Mary, if you need some resources for the gifts that you provided, please let us know. I'd be glad to chip in.
Well, I was trying to be as green as possible. So I sent products from Hawaii Island since I'm on Hawaii Island. And so if someone wanted to send me products from your island to then resend somewhere else, it's not quite as green, but that's all I did. So I didn't even think about it, but throughout this document, we're using EC and we're actually EAC now. So that all needs to be updated.
Right.
So I was going to ask for a motion to approve this today, but I guess I will not do that and just ask for any further discussion, and we'll move this forward for September approval. Is that the correct thing to do, Chair?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I'll just add one more comment since you're going to change EC to EAC, OEQC to ERP.
What are we calling ERP?
Yep, Environmental Review Program. It's the new name.
Okay. So the EAC is at ERP.
ERPIAC.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate if you can send us maybe just send a clean version for next time with no track changes. Yeah,
Right.
we can review it as a whole and put it on the September agenda.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you folks for doing this. And, I've been able to attend the last two forums, and, you folks have done a really good job with it. I know there's always a learning curve, but they've been very informative, and, hopefully we've been getting good feedback from the folks attending and from the speakers.
We have, yes.
So thank you, folks.
I'll just provide one further update. The Les and I are still trying to find the recording of the watershed meeting. I'm quite sure that I said that I clicked the record button. I saw the big thing come up and say you are recording, but we can't find it within Zoom. And Les has given me a good education on what kinds of files to look for in my computer, and I've not found anything to match that description. So our journey is continuing to try to find it. Dawn came up with a good suggestion this morning that we reach out to the speakers and explain our dilemma and ask for their presentations, that we could then compile them at least into a library of the information.
Yeah.
So that might end up being our workaround for that forum. But as you said, there's a learning curve. Never, not being in the production business myself.
No. Thank you, folks. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that the forum, the last forum, the watershed forum, was very good, and I really appreciated it. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions, comments on the INO update?
I just echo what Ron said. It was really interesting for me to listen to somebody from this island talk about all the things that they've been doing on this island. I learned a great deal. Thank you, Mary, for setting that up, and the rest of your committee colleagues.
And thank you, Maka'ala, for doing your presentation, because it actually was pretty amazing to see on Honolulu.
Yep, great job, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to move on because we only have about 37 minutes left in our meeting. All right, I'll give it to you, Robin, for the strategic planning permitted interaction group update.
Okay, yeah. The PIG met briefly this morning, Mary and Roy and I, and I've spoken with Onauna throughout this process, and we sent out a memo, which you all got in this agenda item, with the survey results. And I hope you've had a chance to read through the survey results. And I think one of the things that comes through is that, as we talked about earlier today on a couple of issues, there's a lot of not misinformation, but the absence of information about what our real responsibilities and roles are. And I think there's a lot of interest in there being much more, in those roles being much bigger and more broad than they currently are. A lot of demands for us to do a lot more things. So we thought we would begin the planning process, and I've asked Mary and Roy to jump in here at any time. With those 3 questions that I put at the very end, I listed what our formal responsibilities are from the legislation, specifically the Act 152, as Onana said earlier, what we are specifically charged with doing. And then there are 3 questions. Given the EAC's current capacities and capabilities, what are our priorities? What can we reasonably do? Such as some of the workshops that we've seen. B, in light of the survey's many suggestions for a greatly expanded role, what might a future EAC look like? And I've specifically asked Roy to speak about that. And 3, if the EAC was to expand its role, what capacities and capabilities would be needed? One footnote before I open it up to you. What we're looking for, well, 2 things. One, in addition to the survey that follows this, the survey results, Roy and Emma Ewan submitted long, thoughtful additions that you received previously, but were not included in the formal survey results. And secondly, what we're asking you today is to think about what should, as we begin our strategic planning process, really as a council, what should be our current priorities. That's what we're looking for today. So I open it up to all of you. And I'd love your reactions on the planning, the survey, and whatever.
I'd like to follow up with what Robin has introduced. When you read the comments that everyone provided, they really want a lot more than what we're able to give them. And the state of Hawaii keeps talking about how wonderfully careful and protective they are of the environment, and yet we have no budget. And so, I've often been told that in many instances, that's fine, you can say something, but where's your action to support it? And I think that we have to be, I appreciate that I'm serving as an appointment from the governor, but I don't believe that the governor appointed any of us to just rubber stamp things. And I think that we really need to speak out more loudly, more clearly to the legislature that there's no point in us existing if they don't give us a budget to do our jobs with. This survey clearly shows what people want and expect of us. And I don't believe we're in a position to provide but maybe 10% of it. And that's only because of our own individual generosity. So that's end of speech.
Makala?
Yes, absolutely. I hear it every single day. And not just from the state, but from every agency. We have rules and we have no capacity for enforcement. I think what you're describing is just another form of enforcement. And I certainly bump into it every single day. I think we, to begin the discussion with the recognition that DLNR only has 1%, if that, of the state's budget. So the priorities of Hawaii right now and the strategies, but the priorities are lip service. They actually mean very little. We're learning this as we go through the whole 30 by 30 process. When we look at how the governor's priorities and the state's advertised priorities actually play out on the ground with something that's been as highly promoted and shared as that. If I give you the examples of how 30 by 30 actually works in a place that within which it fits, like the Ha'ena community-based subsistence fishery management area, which is exactly a 30 by 30 effort, it does nothing. It helps us not. It's a lot of talk. It doesn't help with enforcement. It doesn't help, even if we weren't talking about dollars, it doesn't help organizationally. So I think your survey results demonstrate a kind of not just a reflection, but an angst throughout Hawaii that we're just about to that point where we've had it. You're saying you're doing all this, but you're not doing it. You're just writing it in words on a piece of paper. You're not putting a dollar to it. You're not putting a person to it. So I think for me, the key for the EAC would be to try very hard to identify a couple, maybe 3 very, very specific things. We can make that broad statement of you're not doing anything anywhere anyway, but I think to identify a couple of very specific things is the only strategy that I have found helpful in emasculated agencies. To say, well, you can't solve that and you can't do all of that, but can you just do this one thing? Can we start there, to start somewhere? And Robin, that's good strategic planning. Start with one thing that you really figure you can probably do. I don't know that I want to identify that at this point. I think that probably comes out of your process, but I really would like to see us identify 2 or 3 very specific things, and maybe not big dollar stuff, that we could do to respond to that result of the survey, because it's spot on, and it is consistent with everything that we know, all of us that are trying to manage watersheds. If I didn't have direct links to federal money, I would never get any of that work done. That whole watershed presentation you saw me give, the state's almost not in it at all. And not in any part, not in the Malco or the Mackay part. So I'm willing to say that, not in a scolding, but in a fact. And that's untenable. This is our place. Thank you.
I think Ron had his hand up.
I can't see. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
Oh, okay, thank you. First of all, great effort, a wonderful document. I really enjoyed reading it. It's got a lot of good information in it, and thank you for doing it. But I'll start out with one thing that I disagree with. One of the, sort of a general tone that EAs and EISs aren't effective and that they're corrupt and they're off. They're not usually, they can't be, but they're not usually off. There is a persistent perception that an EA or EIS is done to prove there are no impacts. You can see that in some of the comments that people said. Oh, they just say there's no impacts on anything. That's not the purpose of an EA or an EIS. It's to disclose impacts and to propose mitigation measures. An EIS for a big project should certainly say there's a lot of really big impacts on something, and it should try to reduce those impacts to the extent feasible. It's up to decision makers whether to implement the project or not. So again, we need some education for the public about what the purpose is. It's not to whitewash projects. The idea that the Environmental Council should go over with a fine-tooth comb every EA or EIS is a non-starter. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. It would take each of you's time 40 hours a week to do this. You understand that. So don't even think about it. The truth is, the current method works great as long as we do it. And that is crowdsourcing. That's what everybody does nowadays, crowdsourcing. We don't need to go review every restaurant or hotel. We have thousands of people to do it on Yelp. It doesn't always work because of problems in the process, mostly that people don't pay attention. We need to pay more attention. We need to have people do more reviews. We don't need us to review everything, okay? So rely on crowdsourcing, but get more out there. On the other hand, there could be better professional review of EAs. I suggest that every large agency in the state and county employ an environmental specialist. Now, Rob Parsons was one of those guys with the county of Maui. You know, he didn't have enough bandwidth to address everything, but he did do a lot of good work and initially, you know, figuring out what was good, what was bad, what should be on the radar. Every Department of Public Works should have an environmental specialist. Every planning department should have an environmental specialist. Every water supply agency should. We need to encourage that. It's just as important as having 12 engineers in those departments, having a real environmental specialist. You would save money. They could do a lot of the work that is currently farmed out to consultants if they did that. They would pay for their position dozens of times over. I can assure you of that. And finally, I had a really good point. What the hell is it? Oh, yeah. This is the best thing. You know, enforceability. Federal EISs and EAs, but especially EISs, have something called a record of decision. How many of you have heard of that? Several. Good. Yeah. A record of decision. It's a really critical element that comes at the end of the EIS process. And it's a short document, maybe 20 pages at the most, that outlines all the mitigation measures that have to be done. In a good federal project, that is carried through on every single contract that's awarded for the construction and further planning and permitting of the project. So a record of decision is the key outcome of the EIS. It says all the permit conditions, all the permits that are coming up, and it can be relied on by people who are not environmental experts to make sure that the commitments given in the EIS happen. I have suggested this. I suggested this during the rule process, and I think Scott thought it was a little just too much to do at that time. We had so many things to do. I suggest that the next time we do rules, we require a record of decision, and we'll find much better environmental outcomes if we do. Thanks.
So Ron, just to be clear, the ROD would be after and only if the permit was granted. It wouldn't be with the EIS, right? Because
no, it's part of the EIS. It's the conclusion of the EIS process.
Mhm.
And in fact, the federal agency doesn't publish their final EIS for review, you know, for the lawsuit part of it, you know, until they have the ROD attached to it.
Okay.
It's so critical because our EISs are full of unenforceable mitigation commitments that nobody ever looks at again. It's unfortunate.
So I'm hearing a couple of things, well, a lot of things from Ron, but and from Maka'ala, and Mary in the earlier, and Roy in the earlier conversations, and that is the focus on education and advocacy, and that the education is actually what we're doing and what the INO has been doing, and what Scott did for the rules when he went. In fact, I was going to say that to Ms. Rohr about Scott did go to every county and did meet with every planning department and did go over what the new rules meant. So it might not have been successful, but I know he made that effort. So I'm hearing education and I'm hearing advocacy as the two things that you're suggesting be our priorities so far. And advocacy, and Ron, I like that, what you call it, ROD, but that seems to me to fall under our advocacy component because we'd have to advocate for that to become part of the process.
Well, you know, it falls under the rules. I think it should be part of the rules.
Right. Right. Are we, oh, no, by the way, are we making is there it sounds like I'm asking you, is there an existing list of those things in the rules that we need to re-examine if we ever do re-examine? Are we keep,
we don't, I mean, I don't have a holistic list of that. I mean, I think we do. I know we've been asking you to keep track of just the legislative things that we were thinking about. No, but maybe that's something we can agendize at the next meeting to talk about so that,
okay.
Yeah, I'll a note for that.
Roy, Mary, you want to jump in? Any comments about what we have been talking about so far?
Okay, I guess I'll jump in. Yeah, I guess, again, I think I mentioned it in the past, but I think in general, the state needs, it doesn't have to be OEQC or the council, but we need kind of like a vision and somebody that looks at all the issues and priorities and also, you know, come up with the priorities and make sure things get funded. So for those of you who attended Emma Ewan's talk, you know, she talked about integrated planning. And she pointed out that funding was absolutely the most, you know, difficult challenge. And so she advocates, and I've been working with her for a couple of years because it's related to wastewater, but EPA does have a very effective program called integrated planning. And I think across the nation, there's been about 46 integrated plans, very successful. The reason is it's a cooperative effort. You're getting the environmental groups, regulators, all the stakeholders, the agencies, you get them together and you decide, and this is community-wide, it's done, you know, across the community, and you kind of decide what are the most important problems. And then you try to figure out, okay, these are the most important problems and we're gonna fund these first. So, and I don't see that happening here. You know, we fund things that receive the most attention. And, you know, I bring up maybe the injection wells on Maui. You know, counties, you know, thinking of spending 150 million or 200 million to get rid of injection wells because of all the opposition. But, and here, you know, Emma Ewan is saying for 20 million, she can fence in the whole Maui watershed and reduce runoff, you know, prevent invasives and so on. And even on Oahu, you know, we talk about same thing, you know, working with Emma, and she brought this up during her presentation. You know, the city is required to do secondary treatment. It's $500 million. It's tens of millions of dollars for operation and maintenance, but it's only being put in because of the law says you need secondary treatment. But the reality is, you know, again, M&E's made 20 million. And the city has been spending 500 million a year on repairing sewers, and 20 million is the size of a small to moderate sewer project. So again, we have to look at the priorities. You know, what are the benefits? What are the cost impacts? And there's no agency right now that everybody's in their own silos. So we need some visionary agency. It might not be us, but we need something. And I think it'd be nice if the council can push for that. Just have that recognition. So anyway, that's my main thing. The other comments was, again, you know, we spend a lot of money on, you know, EISs and so on, and a lot of it is paper. You know, important things get buried in. Emma pointed that out in her comments, and so did I. So, so I think there's good. You know, you can have good, concise environmental documents, but there's so many that are just too long. And yeah, Emma said it, her comments was it erodes public trust when you submit these huge documents, then everything's buried, you know, it's hard to find, doesn't highlight the key issues and so on. I've seen that over and over also. So anyway, I have a lot more comments, but those are, I think, the main ones.
Robin?
Yeah, Dawn, go ahead.
So, you know, I think, you know, I'm looking at your document and, you know, I see sea level rise and climate change. And I think all the communities are going to start feeling it more and more and more, especially what we just saw with Florida and, you know, what's going on with the Surfside Hotel. And now Maui, West Maui has severe erosion issues. And I think that the community is really waking up to a lot of these things because they've been able to stay at home and watch a lot of meetings. And I think it's really great. But I think that a lot of stuff is going to come our way because we're the ones who are, you know, the environmental rules and everything, and they don't really understand. So maybe, you know, there is a way for the informational forum to do some sort of, you know, not question and answer, but maybe a presentation. I don't know. You know, certainly the committee or the council should all weigh in on that. But I think that just seeing the infrastructure, I just posted an article where DOH, I think it was an Environment Hawaii, you know, DOH mentioned that all their contaminant sites might be underwater with sea level rise. And that's just something that we're going to have to deal with as a whole, a community, a state, and as people, because you or I may live in those areas or you may not. So I think in general, we're just going to be, because our name is environmental, we're just going to catch all of this other stuff. And I think that the more progressive, in terms of what can we recommend, like Ron, he's like, hire more people to do these types of jobs, put some information out there for the general community. I think those are things that are really realistic. But in terms of like reviewing EISs, man, I look at the environmental notice like on the 8th and the 23rd, and there's a lot, and you read all these EISs, there's a lot of stuff in there. So, you have those great community members like Dick Mayer and probably Claudia Rohr in her own sense that are also watchdogs. And, I appreciate those types of people who are saying stuff. But at the end of the day, I think because we are a volunteer, we have to make sure that what we're doing is within the time that we have available to us, right? But I would suggest that we go to the ledge and maybe say, oh, we need more staff, if it's possible. Because I know Les and OEQC, the offices probably need some help. So that's
One
my
of
thought.
the things that comes to mind from what you're saying, Dawn, I think it would be, in an ideal world, great to have one of your forums on what are the environmental organizations in the state. What's the role of the EAC? What's the role of in the nonprofit community, so forth. But I don't think that would attract 100 people. However, if you were crafty enough to put that as part of an existing workshop, it might be really valuable to have that public conversation about what is the role of the EAC and what it's not.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, Robin. Oh, sorry, Dawn, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's interesting, not just for the public, but I honestly think a lot of agency folks don't know what other agencies do.
Yep.
So, I mean, if we could figure out the puzzle and flow chart or hierarchy of this, that could totally be helpful, I think, to folks. And maybe that would lead to, getting the ledge or the counties to want to do some kind of integrated planning and say, oh, maybe we should, have these agencies do X, Y, and Z or whatever. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea.
I also think, Robin, that you remember when we did the first few forums, one of the things we tried to do, well, at least with one especially, we tried to get the legislative staff to come. We scheduled it for their lunchtime, etc. Because these two things have to hooey up. We're helping the agencies learn what we do. We'll also obviously be learning about it, but their political counterparts have to learn too. I mean, if we're actually going to be advocating for, resources, then the ledge is going to be key. And I sit here knowing full well that most of those staff have no idea what we do. And I think we've got a perfect moment in time because we've changed. So hi, we're the EAC. This is our new hat, and this is, da-da-da-da.
So let me throw this out. Let me put feet to that, Makala, and ask you, do you guys think it would be worth pursuing, and do we have the capacity to say, hold, I'm just making this up, 5 or 6 Zoom sessions over a year, each with maybe 10 heads of agencies and or legislative staff that would focus on the EAC and what other environmental agencies exist in the state? Do you think we have the, I don't know what the term is, bandwidth, chutzpah, to convene people for that? You think they'd come?
So I think people would come. Maybe we should start looking at this, to be honest, for 2022. And the reason I say that is because INLs already has, the rest of 2021, maybe even a portion of 2022 planned out with forums. So, I turn to the INL folks to step in on the schedule because, I mean, what did you guys have done 2 already? I think there's at least a couple more planned for this year. those take a pretty significant amount of time. So in terms of, running parallel with the things that are already planned, maybe we want to start fresh in a new year. Give us time to refine the presentations. Sorry, Roy, go ahead.
I think we should do whatever is most important and that will bring us the best results. So, yeah, and that's what my whole feeling was. I think these forums are good, but if you're just talking to the choir, it doesn't get anywhere. You really need to get the lawmakers, decision makers involved. And I didn't see too many elected officials attend the last one, but really that's all it was directed to.
There were several. I think one of the things you need to be aware of too is
Nicole Long was on the watershed.
Yeah, that that we not do it during, it'd be helpful to them to not do it during session. So timing is important for all of these constituencies.
And I think you should open up not just to government heads and ledge at, but also to the planning commissions and also to the public and the private sectors, because you're looking at rail, you're looking at different agencies and different people trying to do environmental assessments and, trying to figure out where to go. So I think it should be open to everybody. I don't think, when I used to work for Department of Defense, we used to have to go to the TEC species, like recurring educational credits classes, and they'd be and I think lawyers, you guys have to do it too, right? By chance, but at HCPO, that would be the opportunity for us to go and attend these classes and these sessions, but there's nothing so far. And I know HCPO is not meeting this year. I think it's virtual again, but I know that, there's, Manoa, the Urban and Regional Planning class, MACZAG. I'm sure everybody would be interested to see what's out there.
We put together a pretty good list for distributing the first survey that we did. It was a good list, and I wonder if it wouldn't be, and again to your point, Onana, maybe wait till 2022, but to think about beginning some conversations, looking towards Roy's idea of integrated planning, and convene some of the environmental leadership of the state. Mix it up. Couple of nonprofit leaders, couple of legislative leaders, and just have this kind of beginning conversation. What don't we have in terms of planning, and what kinds of enforcement? Some of the questions that we've been asking now, with us taking the lead in doing that.
And we, as a community, one of the values that we've had in our organization is as a convener of those kinds of sessions, those kinds of conversations, because we are not one or the other. So as a community, we've said, we want to talk about this, y'all come. And I think the EAC could easily wear that same hat.
Well, it certainly, I'm sorry, Ron, go ahead. Ron, were you going to speak? You're on mute, I think. No. It certainly fits that this conversation fits within our existing mission to provide education and to bring it back. I mean, we changed the way the annual report has to function, but we still have the responsibility to educate, quote, educate the director of OP on what we've heard from the community. So it's certainly not outside of our kuleana to do that. Just to be hard-ass, Tessie and Mahina, if you're still here, I'd love to hear what your thinking is. You've been awfully quiet so far today. I promise Ron, Makal, and I will shut up for a minute.
Robin, if I can just say something really quick while Mahina and Tessie are thinking, I think this would be, let's keep in mind to maybe keep Representative Lowen involved in this, because, as we know with HB 1318, with the move of us over to OP, I think part of the goal was it's kind of a test case in terms of, reorganizing the environmental departments. And in the years past, there were, the bill for the Department of the Environment. And I think there's still interest in that on the legislature side, and perhaps with other agencies. So this, this conversation on our whole strategic planning kind of really fits in line with that. So let's just kind of keep her in mind to include her in those discussions.
Absolutely good point, Onana. She's been a real supporter of ours and I think brings a great understanding to it. And the same thing would go with Mike Gabbard, but good point. Okay, Tessie and Mahini, you're on the spot here. Any comments, any thoughts? Mahina, are you there? Tessie, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry, I'm in. Tessie, if you want to go, I'm going through a tunnel.
I'm trying to unmute. Oh, here we go.
There you go.
No, I'm happy with what I've heard so far. It'd be nice to have all the agencies, including the county agencies, to come in on those meetings, because at least we all are going to be on the same page instead of, it's not my responsibility. So I agree.
Okay, good. Thank you. Mahina, you have any comments you want to add?
Sure, sorry about that. I just made it through a tunnel. Yeah, I think it sounds like a fabulous idea. I totally support, everything that I was able to hear. And sorry again that I'm not on camera in the car, but I'd be happy to help with whatever you need to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, it's a couple of minutes left. We probably should wrap it up. I'll turn it back over. I want to thank so far the PIG, Roy and Mary and Mike earlier for their help in this and the survey. And by the way, to acknowledge and thank Roy for his generous donation. We chipped in to pay the survey guide for the second survey a little bit. He's a young man, but he's done a good job, I thought. Okay, Onana, it's back to you.
Well, thank you, Robin and Roy, for doing that. Maybe one year we'll get a budget. This year was not the year to push our budget bill. I suspect next year won't be either. But we'll keep it on our list of legislative things we want to do. So that was a really great discussion. I think, the other agenda items we had on today are really helping us to kind of define what our strategic planning is. And we're figuring out what role we can play, all knowing that we're volunteers and how difficult and important this work is. So we want to be able to do it properly, but understanding our challenges. So, and Gordon, did you have any questions on the strategic planning or comments? And if you don't, it's okay. I just want to make sure that you're given an opportunity to share if you want to.
No questions, no comments. You guys are doing a great job. I kind of feel for you guys. Yeah, you guys have a bit of a quandary since you're now the EAC. And you got to kind of like establish a new identity, but I think you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Gordon, where are you from?
Where am I from?
What group?
General Contractors Association of Hawaii, GCA. I'm on the environmental council for them. I'm the co-chair.
Joseph Shakat was a member. So he left us, and I was wondering if you or someone from GAC could be a member of the council.
I actually have an application in, is being reviewed.
Okay.
So I see there's still an open position, whether they
good.
like me or not.
Yeah, we need somebody from the construction side.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gordon, it's you passed your first test, hanging on to this long ass meeting. So.
Are you sure you don't want to run away?
No, it's been very, very interesting. And like I said, you guys have a challenge in front of you now that you have a different department. And I don't know, do you have a mission statement? Do you have to change your mission statement? Something, I don't know what you guys got to look at.
Yeah, we have chapter HRS 341-6 that sets forth, what our role is. And yeah, take a look at that. And yeah, I know boards and commissions has reached out to us, but for application. So hang in there, please keep your application in. So we'll see how that moves forward. I mean, I just don't know what Gov's timing is and right now, but yeah, thank you for applying. That's so awesome.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you again to the PIG for your hard work on that. thought it was a really good and interesting survey overall. And yeah, it really drives home the need for us doing the educational component with the public to continue to do that. I do have an agenda item on here for legislative committee update. I don't think there's anything, but Robin, you can go ahead and confirm. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
All right. So our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, September 7th. We're going to do the same time, 1 to 3:30 p.m. So we'll plan for that. Thank you folks for hanging on. It's been a while since we had, our full 1 to 3:30 p.m. meeting. Unless anybody else has anything else they want to bring up, I'll go ahead and adjourn. Anything else from anyone?
Just
No?
a, has Rob communicated with us in any respect at all?
I haven't received a response to text messages in a couple months from him, so I don't know if anybody else has been able to get into contact with him.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Again, yeah. Mhm. All right, anything else?
Thank you for everything, Onana.
No, thank you
Good job.
for everything. Everybody's doing a great job. So again, thanks for great discussions, and we'll keep moving forward. Oh, Gordon, go ahead.
One last question. So I've been communicating with the Office of Environmental Quality Control, and they gave me the link to this meeting today. So is the webmail or the email address changing so I can find out to get invited to the next month's meeting? Or
Yeah. Hey, Les, are you still on? I know Tom's email changed. Did your email change already?
Yeah.
Les
has changed.
It has changed. Okay. Do
I'll
you mind
put it in the chat?
In the chat, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, Gordon, do you have access to the chat? Dawn's gonna share Les's new email address.
If I can find
access to what?
Oh, the chat function on Zoom?
I see that.
We call this Zoom 101. Don't be embarrassed.
No worries, no worries. Yeah.
Just press chat.
And a chat box should come up, and then Dawn is being so kind as to look for Les's email address, and then she'll go ahead and put it in the chat. So it should pop up.
I just sent it. Hopefully that's the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you send it just to him?
Yes. You want me to send it to everybody? Oh wait.
Maybe to everybody.
I don't even know it. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay, hold on. I'll send it to everybody. Don't leave yet.
Thank
you. Now, Gordon, copy and paste it someplace, because when we get off,
Before I
it'll go
lose it.
away.
Okay. Yeah, and make sure to copy it.
Oh, that's new. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, it doesn't let you copy. Okay, there you go. But yeah, thank you, folks. I'll leave this open for another minute so folks can all copy it. But other than that, meeting is adjourned at 3:32 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody. It's nice to meet you, Gordon.
Good meeting, Onana. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody got it? Okay, I'll go ahead and log out.